This conversation is brought to you by philosopherstalk.com, where thinkers discuss.
Created by AITalkerapp.com. Create your own animated conversations. Link in the description.
While we were away, Duke, Kuwait and Jordan both confirmed fresh Iranian attacks again this very morning, and the American Secretary of State has now warned that Iran will pay a price for whatever comes next.
You never actually answered my question before we broke off, Napoleon, so I will ask it again in plain English this time. What precisely does victory look like at the end of this campaign?
Victory looks like the complete destruction of every military asset Tehran possesses, including whatever remains buried under that mountain the Americans have been threatening to flatten for the last several days.
Pickaxe Mountain, they call it, and I notice the target keeps growing larger every week, which is usually a sign that the original objective has already been abandoned in favor of simply hitting things.
The original objective was to break the regime's capacity to threaten its neighbors, and a wider target list simply reflects a wider understanding of where that capacity has been hidden.
Or it reflects a war without breaks, expanding month after month with no stated finish line, which is precisely the sort of campaign that consumed your entire empire between 1805 and 1815.
The Americans have now promised to destroy a bridge or a power plant every single time Iran strikes a ship in the strait, and Tehran has promised in return to strike infrastructure and energy facilities across the whole region, which sounds to me like both sides have finally agreed on a common language at last.
A common language of demolishing the other side's electricity and roads is not agreement, Napoleon. It is simply two governments settling into a shared vocabulary for making ordinary people suffer, while the men giving the orders stay warm and well fed.
The son who now sits where the father once sat, this Mojtaba, inherited a title but not necessarily the authority that goes with it, and a fractured throne is far easier to finish off than a settled one ever was.
A fractured throne is also far easier to rally around when a foreign air force keeps bombing the mountain behind it, since nothing unites a frightened population faster than a common enemy circling overhead.
You assume unity where I see only the appearance of unity, Duke? 20 million mourners at a funeral prove nothing about what those same 20 million will do once the bombing continues into a second winter.
They will do what frightened populations have always done throughout history, Napoleon, which is rally behind whoever promises them revenge, and revenge is a considerably easier promise for a new leader to keep than a negotiated peace.
Since you are so eager to lecture me on finish lines, Duke, allow me to demonstrate that I have actually listened to your argument rather than merely waiting for my turn to speak, which I confess is more courtesy than you have shown me all afternoon.
By all means, astonish me.
Your position, stripped of its usual fog of understatement, is that force, without a political settlement behind it, simply produces more enemies than it kills, that logistics and sustainability matter more than any single spectacular blow, and that a war which cannot name its own ending is not a strategy at all, but merely an expensive habit, and I will grant that this argument has survived 2,000 years of history remarkably intact.
That is an unusually fair summary for a man who spent his career convinced that willpower alone could substitute for supply lines.
I offer the fair summary only so that I may now demolish it properly, Arthur, since a beaten argument deserves the dignity of first being understood before it is destroyed.
How terribly generous of you indeed.
The flaw in your logistics and settlement doctrine is that it assumes the enemy is rational and patient enough to wait for terms, when in fact a regime built on revolutionary theology, as this one plainly is, will simply use any pause to rearm and radicalize, which means the only language it actually hears is force applied without apology.
Tell that theology to the Indian seafarer who drowned when his tanker struck a mine last week. A man with no theology of his own, simply a cargo run gone wrong in a strait your audacious doctrine has turned into a graveyard.
Every war fills graveyards, Duke, yours included, and I do not recall you refusing credit for Waterloo on account of the men who never walked home from that particular field either.
I have never refused credit for the dead, Napoleon. I have only ever insisted on knowing what their deaths purchased, which is rather more than I can say for a blockade that has so far purchased a burning strait, and very little else besides.
It has purchased time, and time is the one commodity no diplomat can manufacture at a negotiating table, which is precisely why decisive action must come first and diplomacy must follow behind it, not the other way around.
Then allow me to return the courtesy, since apparently we are being civilized about this now.
Very well, Duke, proceed with your summary.
Your position, stripped of its usual trumpet fanfare, is that a single audacious strike against the enemy's command and capacity can break its will to fight faster than any blockade or negotiation ever could. That hesitation only invites the enemy to recover, and that history rewards the general bold enough to strike first and strike completely. And I confess Austerlitz alone makes that argument harder to dismiss than I would prefer.
Careful, Duke. That almost sounded like genuine admiration escaping from behind all that English restraint.
It was an autopsy, not admiration, because I offer that fair summary only so I may now bury it where it belongs, since the very audacity you are praising in Tehran this week is the same audacity that left your Grande Armée dead in the snow outside Moscow, and left you personally exiled to a rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean twice over.
Twice was excessive, I grant you, though the first exile was rather comfortable by comparison to the second.
The comparison that actually matters is this one. An unlimited campaign with no coalition discipline and no negotiated endpoint has now spread mines into the Strait of Hormuz, missiles over Jordan, sirens in Bahrain, and a Houthi blockade against Saudi Arabia, which means half the region is now on fire because nobody in Washington was willing to say what a finished war would even look like, and that Napoleon is precisely how your own story ended, surrounded by every power in Europe finally uniting against you because you never once knew when to stop.
I never needed to stop because I never lost until the world conspired against me all at once.
The world did not conspire. You exhausted it into conspiracy, one invasion at a time.
Exhaustion is the price of greatness, Arthur. Ask Europe who it feared for 20 years.
Exhaustion is the price of refusing to listen. Europe feared you, and then it buried you.
Listen to what? Your hedges, your fences, your endless caution.
My caution won Waterloo.
Blucher won Waterloo, and you know it.
Enough.
Fine.
Right. Before this degenerates any further, if you found any value whatsoever in watching two dead men argue about a live war, do the sensible thing and subscribe, because heaven knows Napoleon here will need the company once everyone finally notices he has never once admitted fault in his entire life.
Subscribe indeed, and while you are at it, like the video too, since Wellington clearly needs the validation. A man who spent his entire career standing still behind a hedge, waiting for me to make one mistake, has very little else to feel proud of.
I built an empire that outlasted yours by roughly 2 centuries, and counting, so forgive me if I do not tremble at the insults of a man who lost an empire to a Russian winter and a Belgian field in the very same decade.
An empire built on shopkeepers and rainfall, Arthur. Hardly the stuff of legend, whatever the accountants in London still wish to claim about it now.
A nation of shopkeepers sold enough muskets and gold to bury you twice over, so I will take shopkeepers over dreamers any day of the week, thank you very much.
At least my failures were interesting. Arthur, history remembers me on every continent, while you are remembered chiefly for a boot and a beef dish, which is a rather thin legacy for all that supposed patience of yours.
A boot and a beef dish still outrank a man reduced to arguing geopolitics from exile on a rock, so subscribe, like the video, and pity this poor Corsican, since apparently that is the only kindness he has left coming to him.
Pity is beneath me, Duke, but the like button is not. So strike it, subscribe to the channel, and join us next time when I once again explain military strategy to a man who thinks winning slowly is the same thing as winning well.
I look forward to it the way I look forward to gout, Napoleon, which is to say not remotely, but I shall be here nonetheless, since someone has to keep correcting the record for the people watching.